Warning: this podcast episode contains swearing, drinking, and references towards war. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Demons and Bellinis, the podcast where we whip up a drink and talk about some spooky shit. Woo! I did it right. I am the image of a 1930s Halloween costume that you saw at 3 a.m. on Google Images, and now you can't sleep. Molly.
And I'm the surefire way to get demons in your ass, Dr. Bitchcraft! Let's party, Ashley.
Beautiful. I love it.
In today's episode, we are talking about the ghosts of World War I. So grab a beverage of your choosing, get cozy, and check your closet for monsters. And remember, stay peachy. Okay, so we're gonna kind of veer away from the funny, and despite my intro, this episode's actually a little bit serious, and it's close to my heart because World War I is kind of a specialty for me. It's what I love to study, like that time period from 1900 to 1920, and so it's kind of like, I don't know, I spent so much time researching it, and this came out of that research where, you know how after wars people are like, oh, you can still hear gunshots, you can still see apparitions of soldiers, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking, World War I lasted just over 4 years, right? Mm-hmm. And tomorrow is Remembrance Day on the 100th year anniversary of the end of World War I. Okay. So, we're recording this on November 10th
when what episode came up today? The Exorcism of Roland Doe.
Yes. So tomorrow is Remembrance Day. So it's, you know, maybe it seems kind of fitting that I'm doing this now. Mm-hmm. So, and I was thinking, because World War I lasted for like almost 4 or 5 years, and you had soldiers in the midst of death for so long, did they experience paranormal activity during the war? Because a lot of people think after the war, right? Mm-hmm. But what about during the war? Turns out they did. Okay. And it's wild, some of the shit that these guys wrote in their letters and diaries and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's insane.
Yeah. And we are going to be very respectful during this episode. Like, we are still drinking, but we're going to try to keep the laughs down because this is such a serious topic.
It is, yeah. Like, it should be with any discussion about war, is that a lot of people died, a lot of people put their lives on the line for something that, you know, turned out that wasn't really necessary, right? If you look at so many people talking about World War I after World War I, they're like, this was such a waste of life. There's no reason to do this, right? Yeah. So, you know, it's...
What is also super scary about World War I is, because before, at least from my impression, wars were kind of seen as a heroic thing to do, but I'm not saying that this was a waste of time, but because it was kind of like so much horror was introduced to it. I mean, so many horrible new innovations in war were used: mustard gas, machine guns. Yeah, it's just
it's basically like the world had just over 20 years of peacetime, and in that peacetime they created some very intense innovations in warfare, and then World War I came along and they're like, oh, look at all this new stuff we have, we're gonna use it. And it's just like 20 decades of new stuff just all at once, and people didn't quite know how to use it yet, so it's like you end up with this like war of attrition that was just this horrible bloody back and forth.
My great grandpa was there during the Battle of Ypres, which I think is when they used mustard gas.
Ypres,
yeah.
Yeeps, something like that.
Yeah, Yeeps. No jokes. Yeah, he was there, so.
Yeah, that's, ew. Yeah. It was just that, like, that was the first one that it was used, right?
Yeah. God, that's such a horrible idea to just
way to die.
Think of, the horror that would be during that.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah, no wonder you would have some bad energy after that, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
Yeah, if you thought that Pavelia Island had some bad energy, then, like, fuck.
Yeah. So, I did a lot of research, and I found out that there is a historian. His name is Tim Cook. He is Canada's #1 historian when it comes to World War I. He's top of his game. He's written so much about World War I. But he wrote one article, and this, caught me off guard. He wrote an article called Grave Beliefs, Stories of the Supernatural and the Uncanny Among Canada's Great War Trench Soldiers. Mm-hmm. Because he spent over 20 years reading diaries and letters, the very unofficial documents, mm-hmm. and he discovered this trend of soldiers writing to their loved ones or in their diaries about phenomena. Mm-hmm. And it's just, there's a couple trends in them too. The biggest trend is that it was all at the front. So
that doesn't surprise me.
So soldiers that were stationed, in Britain didn't experience any of the phenomena, but soldiers in the front, in the trenches, experienced it.
Okay.
Right? So it's secluded to the Western Front, probably the Eastern Front as well. Oh god.
Was Tim Cook specifically focusing one of these fronts, or did he look at both?
Probably the Western Front. He looked at the Western, so that was in France.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start off with this quote from. I wasn't able to actually find the whole article because academia is so gatekept.
I forgot to send that to you.
Did you find it?
No, I didn't.
I
forgot to look it up. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. No, it's okay.
We were gonna use my privileges as a university student to find this article, but then I just forgot to. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. But yeah, academia is super gatekept, and so I wasn't able to access the full article. But I do have this one quote, and
Dark academia. Academia.
I do have this one quote that kind of sums up his article really nicely. Mm-hmm. So it says, quote, "As a threshold borderland, the Western Front was a place where such spectral thinking and haunting, where the strange was made ordinary, where the safe was infused with danger, where death was natural and life fleeting. The unnatural, supernatural, uncanny, and ghostly offered secure to some soldiers who embraced these grave beliefs to make sense of their war experience. It was not lost on the soldiers that they seemed to be digging extended graves, the trenches, to protect themselves from death-dealing artillery shells. In sick irony, the artillery bombardments often buried the living and disgorged the dead."
Fuck.
Yeah, it's very heavy.
That line of extended graves with the trenches, that's
heavy.
Yeah.
It's very heavy.
Yeah, it really is.
But in these stories, they're not necessarily, I do find that some of them are very sad and very tragic. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I feel like there's also some light in them, because a lot of soldiers actually experienced almost what you could say guardian angels, in a way. I know that's very Catholic talk, but, mm-hmm. They got saved.
I wouldn't say that even guardian angels is specifically a Catholic thing, because there are actually a lot of, at least from my experience, witches who do actually work with angels. So I definitely believe in their existence, I would say. I think that is very fair to say.
There are so many soldiers being saved, and I think that that's kind of this light among all this
That's
darkness.
really beautiful.
So anyways, I have a lot of individual stories, but they all kind of fall under the same kind of categories. Mm-hmm. So, tell me, what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with residual energy, premonitions, or how about some ghost soldiers? Or one of my favorites is the calming presence. I would say that,
well, you make calming presence sound so much interesting, but then I was also going to say premonitions, because I feel like that would be a really interesting.
Do you want to start with the premonitions?
Sure.
Okay.
Because that was my first instinct.
Yeah. So these stories are actually...
Also, if you hear papers shuffling, it's because Ashley wrote down her notes.
Yeah, I print out my notes because I can't read on my phone. But yeah, so... I have so many stories. Here we go. So the first story is about a soldier who was apparently saved by his brother who died 2 years earlier. I couldn't figure out if he had died in the war or from other causes. But his brother had died 2 years previous. Mm-hmm. So the soldier was sleeping in a dugout, so an underground shelter in the trench kind of thing.
Yeah.
When he was awakened by his brother. And so he said that his brother had warm hands, and he like felt his hands, and he said that they were warm.
That's like, really interesting because you don't often see that in ghost stories.
Yeah. So he said that his hands were very warm.
Okay.
And so his brother told the soldier to get his gear and follow him out of the dugout. So he follows his brother. A few moments later, the dugout is hit by a shell and explodes.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Here's another story, very similar. Mm-hmm. So, a soldier named Amos Mays, mm-hmm. he wrote home to his mom after he was injured, and he said, quote, It seems strange that one should have the premonition of coming events as your dream, yet it very often happens. The night I was hit before leaving the front line trenches, I had the feeling, which I could not rid myself of, that something was going to happen. So before he was injured, he had a dream that it was going to happen.
That's very common, especially in psychic premonitions.
Yeah.
That's very common. We all have, to a certain extent. I mean, this is my belief. I know this isn't necessarily a belief, but I believe that to a certain extent, we all have a third eye where we can have at least emotions and deja vu. Not really deja vu, but like instincts that things are about to happen.
Mm-hmm. So like a lot of soldiers were just like, I knew this was going to happen before it happened, mm-hmm. which is very interesting. This story is probably one of my favorites. So, a Canadian soldier, his name is Cook, he writes home to his mom, and he says, quote, One night while carrying bombs, I had the occasion to take cover. When about 20 yards off, I saw you, his mom, looking towards me as plain as life. Dumbstruck, he crawled nearly to the place where her vision appeared, as a German shell slammed into the place where he had just left. And then he ends the quote with, Had it not been for you, I certainly would have been reported missing. You'll turn up again, won't you, Mother, next time a shell is coming.
Holy shit.
So yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that was perhaps either an angel or a spirit? Yeah. Some sort of friendly energy taking the form of his mother?
You could say that. Because it's like he was on the, like...
Or could it also be an extension of her own energy?
Possibly, right? So it's like he sees his mom, he crawls towards her, and then wherever he was, bomb hits, and he survives.
It seems like that's, at least in these last two stories, seems to be a very common trend.
Yeah, of like people seeing people that they knew or they know, and those people save them, right? Mm-hmm. Just like...
I mean, family is a very powerful thing. And healthy family, I should probably reiterate, is a very powerful thing.
Yeah. And just that line, you'll turn up again, won't you, next time a shell is coming? That, like,
that's so
hurts
cool.
my heart, though. It's like, but at the same time, it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Because, like, he wrote that not expecting anyone to see it except his mom, mm-hmm. right? And Cook, the historian, did I say his name is Tim Cook, too? Yeah, Tim Cook. He says that even after the war, these soldiers who experienced this phenomena, they didn't change their minds about it. Mm-hmm. They said, yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
I saw that. That is what happened. And they didn't say, oh, no, it's because of this. Or, you know, maybe it was because I was, like, sleep deprived. They said, no, I saw that ghost. Or I saw my mom.
Well, the thing is like, yes, of course, it is very sad because it is such a negative environment.
Yeah.
But also, the fact that these people found comfort in their comforting figures in a situation, in an environment that is so horrible, is actually quite beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It is. What I should also point out, too, is that Tim Cook, he also, in his article, is talking about how, like, there's a lot of ways to, like, kind of explain what these soldiers experience, whether it's sleep deprivation or, you know...
Sorry, I'm burping.
or about post-traumatic stress or... you know, any of those causes, which is, mm-hmm. you know, very possible too. And that is something to keep in mind. Mm-hmm. That, you know, what these soldiers went through is something that we hope we will never go through. And mm-hmm. they had to make sense of something that they thought they would never go through.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Well, one thing that I think is very important to note in a lot of different experiences in angel visits and in paranormal sightings is that while something may not be real to someone else, if its effect is real, like saving a life, then it's just as real as anything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It has its own, like, it has its own purpose.
Yeah.
It has its own energy. Mm-hmm. It's real.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many stories of people or soldiers claiming that they were saved, and it's really quite fascinating. You want me to tell you about the calming presence?
Sure, yeah.
Why are you holding that out?
I'm offering it to you.
She's holding vodka out to me.
It's a vodka drink because you said you hadn't tried it before.
Oh, I'll drink that.
Yeah, it's good.
Yay. Anyways, so there was only one letter of this that was documented this, but I think it is both absolutely beautiful and absolutely horrifying.
Okay.
Just throwing that out there.
I'm ready.
So this is from a soldier named Alice Reed, and he said, seconds after a shell explosion buried him in corpses during the 1916 Battle of the Somme, he crawled out to find the battlefield had become silent. He waited, scarcely breathing, for something. Waited. It seemed minutes that could only have been seconds. Then it came. Invisible, intangible, but nonetheless very real. Something came to that place of desolation, stopped a moment, and passed on again. And he wrote that in a letter to his mom. So he was buried under these bodies. He crawls out, and then that quote, then it came, invisible, intangible, but nonetheless very real, came to that place of desolation, stopped a moment, then passed on again.
That is so interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
There's something both, like, very beautiful about that, but also very, like, cosmic horror about that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really put that into any better words than what Wallace did there.
Yeah. I mean, I know that it's not very... It doesn't serve as great evidence in a lot of cases, but I think that feeling a presence is very good evidence because it is... You can feel presences. It's so real, and I think that is so interesting. And like, from hearing that, I think I definitely believe him.
And like, just the way that he wrote it doesn't make it necessarily seem like it's something like a human entity, but not a bad entity. If that makes sense.
No, it doesn't sound bad at all.
It sounds like an entity that's bigger than us, but like
perhaps something that's experiencing all this horror, perhaps, and lending its energy. There's not really a proper way to put that into words because it is so big and so... Oh, God. I don't have words for that.
I know. It leaves you kind of like you can't... Even thinking about it is hard, right? Because it's like, how do you think about something like that? Where
you can't unless you've experienced it.
Yeah. Or like just like...
Which is why I think that history as a discipline is so important. Because it's hard to put yourself into the shoes of people who have experienced horror in the case of war history. But I think that reading these documents and at least seeing what you can glean from all these experiences is very important.
Yeah, and I think what's very interesting is that this aspect of soldiers experiencing this kind of phenomena is extremely understudied. Like, there is no other academic article about it other than Cook's.
I mean, it's kind of... In academia, it's very hard to take paranormal research seriously.
Oh, yeah. Like, we were talking about World War I in my history class, and I was thinking about this because I've been studying this, like, stuff before this. This was the other day. And I was thinking about that, and I didn't say anything. Because I was like, if I say this, they're just going to laugh at me. Right? Like, me trying to bring up the paranormal in an academic setting, they're just going to be like, okay, but you can, like, write that off. I'm like, okay, but these soldiers wrote this down, and I feel like you should listen to what these soldiers are saying.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right?
We owe them that.
Yeah, and then I ended up bringing it up with my professor after the class, and he was like, oh, I really wish you had brought that up, because it is real. Like, even if you look at all the wars, there's experiences of phenomena, and, like, he even said in Vietnam, there's talk about UFOs, right? So it's like, that phenomena does exist, but academia just ignores it. And it's like, no, let's talk about it because that's an aspect of it.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, even if you can say that it's not real, it's still something that is worth discussing.
Yeah, like
to
soldiers...
disprove it if you wish to.
Yeah,
but at least take it into account.
Yeah,
because it is part of that narrative.
Like
sorry for keeping
it's okay. You. Like you said, soldiers wrote it down. Why don't we listen to them?
Yeah,
yeah.
Again, if it's real to them, then it should be taken accounted for, and it is real in that aspect.
Yeah. There's the other phenomena is that soldiers saw their dead comrades.
That doesn't surprise me, but yeah.
Yeah. There's one story, this one just makes me really sad. A Canadian platoon of men were heading away from the front. Kind of how the trenches worked is that you had this, like, kind of like you had your front trench, and then you had a series of trenches going all the way back for quite a few miles. Mm-hmm. And the front trench was, like, the front. And then soldiers would rotate through the trenches. Mm-hmm. So soldiers who were at the front for a long time, they rotated to the very back, and that was, like, their rest period. Mm-hmm. So they never really left the trenches, but they were still, they had these rest periods. Yeah. So Canadian platoon were heading away from the front. So their lieutenant, he looked back at his men, and he noticed that one of them was falling behind. And Tim Cook says that his name was Private Rex. I don't know if that was his real name, but yeah, his name was Private Rex. So the lieutenant went back to see if he was okay, and he offered the private some food, and the lieutenant said that the soldier was very pale, and when he took the food, he had hands as cold as ice, the private, which is, like, very interesting, is that hands come up again and again and again. Yeah. Which is...
Well, it's what we interact with, that's... Yeah. It's a very important aspect of human nature, so that it makes sense, definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah.
It's how we
interact
with the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting, is that
it's our instruments.
Yeah. You had the ghost try to warm hands, and then this ghost has ice cold hands. Mm-hmm. So when they reached the camp...
Ghost foreshadowing.
When they reached the camp, the lieutenant couldn't find this private, so... he was, like, asking around. He's like, hey, where's this private? And he was told that this private died in battle 3 days before, and he even was present at his burial. Which is kind of interesting, because I think that goes to show that in the fury of war, things get kind of blurry. You might not remember everything, right? Mm-hmm. But then he sees this private who he witnessed his funeral, mm-hmm. and then he sees him 3 days later. Right? And he, like, interacts with them and talks to him, and then he's just gone. Yeah. That story's really sad.
Yeah, it really is.
Do you want to hear some fantastical stories now?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. These ones are... one of them is very, very widely recorded. Okay. It's called took place during the Battle of Mons. Mm-hmm. And it was the first battle that the British fought in during World War I. So the soldiers claimed that they were aided in their battle against the Germans by, quote, the Angels of Mons, which were British longbow archers from 1415 who killed almost 5,000 French knights at the Battle of Agincourt.
Okay.
Legend says that one of the soldiers had prayed to St. George, and the longbowmen answered. So, apparently these longbowmen, these ghosts of longbowmen, mm-hmm. showed up, and they pushed the Germans back enough for the British to retreat to safety. And it's told so widely reported, even the Mons Memorial Museum mm-hmm. tells this story.
Was it recorded by the Germans who were pushed back at all?
It's just the British I could find that were talking about it. Which is kind of interesting, because it's, like, nationalism and stuff like that. Yeah. But, I don't know, it's just a very interesting story of,
no, that totally is.
These, like, longbow-men showing up mm-hmm. and, like, interacting intelligently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really interesting.
It's a wild story. I have another one like that, but not necessarily, like, they were,
like, and when you said widely recorded, do you mean that multiple people wrote about this?
Well, like, it was the first story I found because so many different websites had it.
Okay. So was it from one singular source? One first-hand source, or was it like a second-hand?
They all seem fairly second-hand, but it seems like a story that was talked about a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But, like, so many, like, websites have it, right? Mm-hmm. When you go and, like, Ghosts from World War I, Battle of Mons. Mm. I don't know.
Nice.
It might also be because the museum hypes it up a lot, that's why people talk about it. But, anyways, mm-hmm. It seems very patriotic, if that makes sense. Mm. And
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of army ghosts. Like, I mean, even in across the pond in America, like, you see a lot of cases of, like...
Oh, like American Civil War ghosts? Yeah.
Which, I mean, racist ghosts, but in some cases...
Yeah. I think this one's my last story, which is... Oh, we have a couple short episodes. But anyways, this is my last story, and I think you're gonna like this one.
I'm really excited. And I'm also kind of glad that we're going with the shorter episodes because they are a lot easier to edit. And we did have a long one.
Yeah.
Our fourth episode. I don't know what the finished time will be because I haven't finished editing it yet.
Assless chaps makes me laugh. Also, every time we do a cowboy themed episode, we have to play that song.
We're gonna have to ask the creator again.
Yeah.
Sorry, but yeah. When we finished recording that, it was over an hour long.
Yeah.
We talked for an hour long about ghost towns. And also another thing is that I actually messaged Mantia on Tumblr.
I love this.
And I had to ask, hey, can you please use your cowboy rap in our podcast? They were very excited. They're so nice.
Yeah.
And thank you, Mantia, if you're listening, for letting us use your cowboy rap. But
I probably should have asked you before I played it, but it's like...
It's okay. I took the liberty of asking.
Yeah. I needed that music.
It was really good. Okay, now that we got our laughs out of the way, let's go back to World War I.
Well, I actually chose a story because I think it might actually make you laugh.
Okay. No, this is good. I've been very sad these last few minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. More of a solemn sadness than sad.
Anyways, so this is a story. Yeah, it is a story. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
This was told.
So when guns finally fell silent in 1918, James Wentworth Day, I should have looked up who he was. Anyways, he later became a broadcaster and a writer. He was accompanied by a Corporal Barr on a mission to collect post and rations before returning to their camp. So they walked past a wood where trees had been disfigured by shell blasts, and as they drew alongside it, ghostly German cavalrymen swept out of the trees and charged toward a spectral vision of French troops on the other side of the wood. Not quite knowing what they had seen, the men waited for the clash of swords or gunfire, but none came, only silence and a vision of empty devastation all around them. The men agreed they'd both seen something mighty queer.
That's me trying to look for short haircut things on Pinterest. Me, oh look, that's a lot of gays. That's mighty queer. So are you telling me that these French ghosts came out and trolled these Germans?
No. It was the Germans came out and attacked these ghostly French troops.
Yeah, no. These French troops trolled the Germans.
No. They're both ghosts. Both sides were ghosts.
What?
Yeah, okay, here, let me keep going.
Okay, sorry. I think I missed something here.
Okay, no, I know. So they saw ghostly German cavalrymen. So cavalry is men on horseback.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
Swept out of the trees and they charged toward a spectral vision of French troops.
So they watched some ghosts, like...
Yeah. So they saw something mighty queer, but said no more about it and reached camp again soon after. The next day, Day went to ask a peasant in the nearest village about what he had seen and about the wood. And this is a quote, apparently, from that peasant.
Are they still using peasant in World War I? Like,
I don't know.
Peasant.
This, like, I'm reading the quote, and it said peasant, so...
Okay, yeah, that's very, like, God, 2012 Tumblr.
2012 Tumblr. Anyways,
I was talking to my hairdresser about Moon the other day.
Oh, fuck.
Or, sorry, today, because I got my haircut today. But, shout out to Kayla. Her favorite meme is Moon.
Wow. Anyways, so this peasant said, "Ah, monsieur." It literally says that. "That is a wood of dead men. The cavalry of French and Germany have always met each other by that wood." And so he took Day to go see the graves that stood in a tiny churchyard of all the cavalry that had been lost in Temple Wars, but I think that's a bit of exaggeration. So that means that...
I'm so glad that they have graves for those horses.
But
they deserve it.
I was, like, thinking, like, okay, if we had French and German, what war would that have been? Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 71.
Sure, I don't know anything about that, but yeah, continue.
Anyways, the Franco-Prussian War, or the Franco-German War, was basically Ottoman Bismarck was trying to unify Germany.
Okay.
And Napoleon III, not the Napoleon, it was Napoleon III, who was like as a person in my history class, quote unquote, called him the shitty version of Napoleon. He legit said that to my professor. He was like, my professor's like, anyone know who Napoleon III was? And this kid just raises his hand and goes, the shitty version of Napoleon?
The knockoff Napoleon, the no-name brand Napoleon.
He's not even good enough to be Napoleon Dynamite. But anyways, so Napoleon III and most of France was very nervous about Bismarck, and then basically Bismarck taunted France, and then France was like, you know what, fuck you, we're gonna go to war, and then they went to war. It's
not just how war works.
Yeah.
Not to simplify it, but
yeah. So I mean, which is interesting because then that would, is just an example of like seeing a story, going back and finding some possible historical evidence of it. It's like,
yeah, it's kind of like what we do.
Yeah,
a little bit, yeah.
I pretty much all I have of any of those stories. Would you have a Bellini with any of these soldiers?
I would have a Bellini with all of them. I feel like they need a drink.
They need a Bellini.
But then again, alcoholism was such a rampant thing post-war, so maybe not. Maybe we can have a nice glass of water together.
I'd have a Bellini with that cosmic entity that stopped by.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
For a minute there.
Well, I mean, I'm practically a cosmic entity, so you're doing right now. But, what I do find really interesting about that last story is just the idea of a culturally conscious ghost story and just taking it as fact. Yeah. Because you see a lot of that where it's like, oh yeah, we just have ghosts in this town and that's just like how it is, Yeah. Like the park rangers and Bodhi, was it?
Yeah, they were just like, oh yeah, it's full of ghosts.
Oh yeah,
they make lasagna. There's too much garlic in my lasagna.
There's not enough garlic in my lasagna.
Yeah, but then she put too much garlic in.
Damn it.
That story's so good.
It's really good. But yeah, no, I just find that whole idea super interesting. It's like how there's this this hospital near where we are that people just say is haunted. I don't know if that's necessarily backed up very well.
I don't think it is.
But that's just me. It's just very in the cultural in our town consciousness that this place is haunted.
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting with this place where it's like, oh yeah, that's a battlefield. Therefore, from long
that's
time
a forest
ago.
of dead people.
Therefore, it's full of ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, all jokes aside, these stories are very serious. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it is a very understudied part of World War I. And I'm sure there are countless stories from countless wars about soldiers experiencing phenomena. Mm-hmm. And if I had more time, I would have gone into like World War II. I would have gone into like previous wars from like Napoleonic Wars, all that stuff, right? But I know just World War I is like a specialty of mine, and it's something that I take very seriously. So,
I mean, exploring dark academia is very important because you do get a lot of stuff that isn't talked about, like LGBTQ history.
Why is that dark?
Not dark. I'm saying that it's not explored. It's not in like dark as in like not often touched on, not dark as in like spooky. I'm saying like stuff that isn't ever talked about. Yeah. Which, because I'm in this history, this gender, sexuality, and women's history class, which is all about how history, no matter how unbiased you can claim it is always going to be biased. Yeah. And so maybe the solution is to lean into that biasness, because then it shows like your own motivation and your own reasoning for your research. Yeah. But you just have to be able to like illustrate when you're inserting your own biasness or your own speculation. Mm-hmm. But just like really highlighting the fact that it is biased, and that's why dark academia exists, because some people just don't want to look into that. Yeah. And because paranormal stuff isn't taken seriously. Yeah. And like I was actually kind of hesitant to do this because I'd thought about it, and I thought about that question. And I'm going to Molly, and I was like, would it be all right if I did this? Because I don't want to make a joke, or I don't want to, drum things up, or like I just want to tell these stories as they are. And I did. I just read the quotes that the soldiers wrote. I mean, there might have been some editing from like the reporters and stuff and Cook, but other than that was the quote. Yeah. Right. So like I didn't want to go into this and be like, they definitely experienced ghosts. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that here's what these soldiers wrote, and I think that we should discuss it.
So, that's why I was saying to Molly, like, we should handle this in a very somber way. Yeah. Because it is very heavy. Tomorrow is Remembrance Day, so.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad that we covered this episode. I hope that we were respectful. I feel like we were okay, which is good. But, thank you for bearing with us with this not very comedic episode. I don't know if any of your episodes are really comedic because...
We think we're funny, but...
I think I'm very funny, but not a lot of people do. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. We hope that you enjoyed. Have a very... when is this episode coming out? Around Christmas time, I think.
I think
it's definitely December.
Christmas.
Yeah, this is coming out on the 22nd.
Yeah.
So have a very Merry Christmas.
Have a safe New Year's.
If you celebrate that. If you're a witch like me, happy day after Yule. And yeah.
If you like these more serious episodes, let us know.
Yeah, of course.
If you want us to just stick to being funny, we can do that too.
Funny in quotes.
Yeah, just stick to being drunk idiots. But we did our best to not be drunk idiots for this one. So.
Yeah. Send us your episode suggestions. We haven't gotten any yet.
Please.
We're talking. But I would love to hear what you guys want to hear us talk about.
Or if you have like any spooky stories or anything like that, even just like weird facts, send them to us. We will gladly talk about them and look into them.
Yes. All right. Again, have a great winter. Have a very Merry Christmas. Happy Yule. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and we hope that you enjoyed the episode. This episode features the voices of Molly Lorette and Ashley Smith. Our theme music was composed and produced by Larry Lorette, our cover image was designed by Ashley Smith, and the sound editing was done by Molly Lorette. Have any comments, concerns, or cases you want us to cover? Email us at demonsandbellinis@gmail.com. You can also find us at Demons and Bellinis on Tumblr, Demons and Bellinis on Instagram, and at DBellinis on Twitter, that's capital D and capital B. You'll also be able to find case pictures tweeted out there and posted to our Instagram. Thanks again, and we hope that you keep your ears open. Have a very happy holiday season from everyone at the Demons and Bellinis team.